She thought her life was complicated, until the man she loved became the reason her world shattered. Let's uncover the shocking revelation together. Hey guys, welcome to today's amazing and compelling movie, brought to you by your favorite actors and actresses. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. There's so much to learn from it. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe for more captivating movies from us. This movie story begins with a family, where the father shouted so loudly that his children, Star, Bright, and Ife, thought something terrible had happened, only to find out it was because he had lost a bet. They scolded their dad and went back to bed. The next morning, Star was about to leave for work when Bright begged her for money for a music studio session. She ignored him and told Ife, who was eating from the pot, to do what is right. Then she left. At Star's office, a young man named Charles walked in asking to see the MD. Star welcomed him, and after introducing himself, she realized who he was. She went to check with the MD and returned minutes later to call Charles into the MD's office. When he asked for her name, she told him, and then she left. Later that night, when Charles got home, his maid had already prepared dinner, but he simply told her to bring his water to his room and left. The next day at the office, Star's MD spoke to her about a VIP client named Charles, saying he was very difficult to impress. However, the MD believed Star could secure the deal within the next hour. Hours later, Star met with Charles and showed him around the property. Though he tried to tease her, she remained focused on business. When she was done, he was impressed and insisted on taking her home. She agreed, and while on the way, Charles engaged her in a conversation about herself. They enjoyed the moment together. That evening at home, Bright and Ife were arguing over food. When Star arrived, she tried to settle them, but seeing how drunk their father was, she became upset and went to her room while the siblings continued arguing. Meanwhile, Charles also got home and scolded his maid for entering his room without knocking. When she tried to seduce him using her body, he sternly sent her away. The next day at work, Star received some packages from Charles through a delivery man. She was surprised and appreciated the moment. Later that evening, Charles escorted her home and was very intentional about inviting her to dinner. He kept asking until she accepted. She said nothing and walked inside. One weekend, Charles visited Star's house. After introducing himself to her siblings, he gave them the gifts he brought, and they were excited. When Star saw this, she took him outside and teased him for bribing her siblings with gifts. Charles then asked her out for dinner, which she accepted. They had a few more conversations before he left, pretending to kiss her goodbye. When she got inside, her siblings teased her about her boyfriend, but she told them she wasn't dating him, at least not yet. But here's a question for you. Could Charles's interest in Star be genuine? Or is he hiding a secret that will change everything? Later that night, Charles invited Star over to his house. She presented the different types of food on the table. He called his maid to serve them. But during the process, the maid intentionally spilled water on Star. Star defended the maid, believing it was an accident, and they continued enjoying their time together. The next day at the office, Star received another package, a dress from Charles to replace the one ruined at dinner. She was excited. Later that day, she went home to drop the dress. But just as she was leaving the house, she saw her father running from two men who were threatening his life. Star begged on her father's behalf, but they warned her that if they didn't get their money soon, they would deal with him. Then they left. Star arrived late at the office. Her MD scolded her for coming in late. She apologized and explained that it was due to a family emergency, but the MD refused to listen. Charles then stepped in and asked the MD not to worry. Star promised it wouldn't happen again. She later told Charles what happened at home, but didn't go into details. He offered to help with her father's debts and also provide better accommodation for her at the Highland, but she declined. That evening, when Star got home, she scolded Ife for eating junk food, which was not healthy for her pregnancy. Ife then told her that the money Star kept in her bag for their rent was missing. Star was shocked. After checking, she discovered their father had taken it to gamble. At that point, Star was speechless and started to worry about what they would do next, especially as their rent was due. Guys, let's take a moment. Put yourself in Star's shoes. What would you do if you were faced with all these challenges? Would you run to Charles for help and take the easy way out, or bear the cross alone? And here's the real mystery. How did Ife get pregnant? No one seems to be talking about it. Kindly share your thoughts as we continue to uncover what really happened. The next morning, Star and her sister went to meet the landlord, who had come to collect the rent. Charles, who came to see Star, saw the landlord hesitating to collect the money. Their father, who was drunk, came out and fainted after speaking nonsense. The landlord, who insisted on being paid in cash, gave them until noon and left. Charles helped carry their father inside, and Star was embarrassed. Some hours later, Charles returned with a huge amount of money for Star to settle everything she needed. She appreciated his gesture and opened up about how her mother had left her father for his best friend and sold all his property. That heartbreak led him to drinking and gambling. Charles wanted to help more, but Star insisted that her father must show willingness to change first. Charles respected her decision, but told her she could always come to him if she changed her mind. Then he left. Days later, Charles and Star were enjoying a quiet moment in his room when the maid barged in without knocking to ask what they wanted for dinner. Charles scolded her and sent her away. Star noticed that the maid didn't like her. She even joked about the maid possibly being in love with Charles, and they both laughed about it. One day, Star was talking with her sister about the baby's gender, which Ifa said she didn't want to know yet. She then asked Bright, who had just walked in, if he had seen their dad. Bright said he hadn't seen him at his usual spot. They were surprised that their father hadn't come home. Star calmed them down and said if he didn't return by nightfall, they would start searching for him the next morning. The next day, Star and her siblings began searching. They went to his usual drinking spots, but no one had any idea where he was. At one restaurant, the owner insulted their father and tried to detain them over the money he owed. But when she saw Ife was pregnant, she allowed them to leave. After searching everywhere with no success, Star convinced her siblings to wait 2 more days before involving the police, and they agreed. A few days later, Charles followed Star to the police station to file a missing person report. But to Star's shock, the officer explained that her father's case was far more serious than she thought. He owed almost every bar and restaurant in the area, and even dangerous men were looking for him. The officer warned her to prepare for the worst. Then they left. Charles tried to console her, suggesting that maybe her father disappearing might be a blessing in disguise, a weight lifted. He encouraged her to focus on her siblings, but Star brushed it off, saying she wasn't ready to lose her father despite his flaws. Charles apologized and promised to do everything he could to help find him. When Star got home, she shared everything with her siblings. She encouraged them not to lose hope that they would find their father eventually. Guys, do you think their father abandoned them out of guilt for all the pain he caused? Or could there be a justifiable reason behind his disappearance? Was he really kidnapped? Let's find out together. Days later, while Star and Charles were spending time together, Star was lost in thought, wondering why her father left. Charles suggested she take a break and focus on herself. He proposed different vacation options. Star agreed, and they decided to fly out of the country, with Charles promising to take care of her siblings in her absence. After a while, Charles left for work, promising to return soon. He left Star alone with his maid. Not long after, the maid brought Star her breakfast and whispered something confidential, something Star was never supposed to hear. She then led Star to a hidden part of Charles's house. To her utter shock, her father was there, healthy and relaxed. Star was furious. She confronted her father, expressing how she and her siblings had thought he was dead. They cried, searched everywhere, and almost gave up hope. Moments later, Charles walked in and tried to calm her down. He explained that he had only hidden her father to help him recover, since Star wouldn't allow him to intervene earlier. He admitted her father had been living there for months. Star was furious and warned Charles never to come close to her or her family again. Then she took her father home. Charles was livid. He scolded the maid for what she did, accusing her of betraying him to get attention. He fired her immediately and sent her out of his house. Back home, Bright and Ife were thrilled to see their father, who looked strong and healthy. Bright even praised Charles's effort, but Star didn't want to hear it. She dismissed all their compliments and walked away. Charles tried calling and messaging Star to explain, but she refused to respond. He became restless. One day, Bright and Ife tried to cheer her up when she got back from work. They told her how Charles had been trying to reach out to her, but Star, still hurt, refused to listen and walked away without a word. The next day, Charles waited for Star at her office. He pleaded with her again, but she refused to hear him out. She insisted that they talk only about business matters and went straight to work. Her MD came not too long after and talked to her about a property Mr. Charles had just bought. He wanted her to handle it because, according to her boss, she was the only one capable of managing it. He instructed her to make sure she closed the deal. At the property location, Charles arrived and saw Star waiting. He pleaded with her, but she tried to keep it strictly business. Charles had actually bought the property for her, just so she could be closer to him, but she turned down his offer, telling him that money couldn't buy his way into her heart. Then she walked away. Later that day, Ife was in serious pain and tried calling Star, but she wasn't picking up. She then called Charles, who quickly showed up and took her to the hospital. At the hospital, when Star arrived, she appreciated Charles, who had waited outside. Ife told her sister that Bright now lives in the studio, while their father has been going out to look for jobs, all thanks to Charles. Ife knew Star missed him and said he missed her too. She insisted Star should give him a chance as time passed. That night, Charles saw them off to their home. Before he left, he tried explaining himself to Star again. She told him she heard him, but making such a big decision without her consent wasn't right. She said she needed some time before getting back to him. Then he left. Later that night, Star called Charles. He had been expecting her call. They both spoke and enjoyed the moment together. Meanwhile, Star's siblings were watching her. When the call ended, they teased her, trying to get an update on what was going on. The moment passed with laughter. The next night, Star and Charles spent time together. Star appreciated everything he had been doing for her family. Charles told her about firing his maid after what she did. Though the maid had a crush on him, she crossed the line, and now they were free from her drama. Wow, Charles really is an angel in disguise. Who would have thought he would help Star's father recover and reunite the family? But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Does Charles truly deserve to become part of this family? One day, Charles went to see Star's father, without her knowledge, to seek his blessing, as he planned to marry Star. Her father, having seen how Charles had gone to prove himself, gave his full support. They planned to surprise Star together. That night, when Star returned home, she asked her family why they always treated her like she had superpowers. She then told them about the upcoming dinner date they had at Charles's house and pleaded with her siblings to behave themselves. Everyone was excited as the moment went by. At Charles's house, Star and her family were warmly welcomed. As they settled at the dining table, Charles told them he had 2 surprises. Everyone assumed the surprise would be about the baby, but then he called in Mrs. Bukola, Star's mother. When she showed up, the entire family was shocked. Star got even more upset with Charles. First, it was her father, now her mother. She made it clear to Charles that he had no right to interfere in matters that didn't concern him. Mrs. Bukola apologized to her family for abandoning them and for running away with her husband's property and best friend. She expressed deep regret, saying that the man she ran away with later became seriously ill, and all they took wasn't even enough to treat him before he died. Star poured her heart out. She told her mother how her departure shattered them, how their father became a broken man, turned to alcohol and gambling, and how she had to work herself to the bone, trying to be both mother and father to her siblings. Ife, trying to help the family, had been taken advantage of and was now pregnant, and the man responsible was nowhere to be found. Star told her mother she would never consider her part of the family again. Mrs. Bukola was heartbroken, especially after seeing Ife pregnant. Star even demanded that Charles fire her mother if she now worked for him. But during the argument, Ife suddenly went into labor. Charles quickly rushed her to the hospital. Lo and behold, Ife gave birth safely. Charles and Mrs. Bukola came to see the baby, but Star still refused to let her mother close. Ife insisted that her mother should at least see her granddaughter. Their father then spoke to Star, encouraging her to let go and forgive. He reminded her that no one is perfect, not even him. Now that the family was slowly coming back together, he said it should be a time of healing and reconciliation. Eventually, Star forgave her mother, and they all enjoyed a beautiful moment of reunion. A few days later, Charles and Star went for a picnic. After a long, joyful conversation, Charles proposed to her. That was his second surprise. Star was thrilled and said yes. Charles told her that, having never truly known the joy of a real family, he made it his mission to ensure that hers would thrive in love, peace, and unity. The moral lesson of this movie is, no one is perfect. Every family has its struggles and secrets, but with love, forgiveness, and unity, healing can take place. True love isn't proven by money, but by actions that come from the heart. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe for more captivating movies from us. Bye.